This episode brought to you by Peter Wood's Museum of the Impossible.
What's a Museum of the Impossible? It's gonna be like Harry Potter meets Ripley's Believe It or Not. It'll be a one-of-a-kind, themed, interactive space where people can experience the impossible. But I need your help. To get the project started, I've set up a Patreon over at museumoftheimpossible.com. If you're able to throw a few bucks my way each month, we can build it together. Thanks for your support, and I can't wait to welcome you into the Museum of the Impossible. Welcome to the podcast of the Impossible. I'm Peter Wood, and you've heard me talk before about my Museum of the Impossible project. Well, today I'm talking with someone about the Museum of Illusion. I've got a spy on the inside, and I'm looking forward to hearing all of the inside dirt and maybe some fun stuff too. Please welcome Charlie Ross.
I'm a Russian operative, man.
Right?
yeah, I'll tell you all the secrets.
I've known you for over a decade, which is longer than the Museum of Illusion has existed, and certainly more than my crazy little Museum of the Impossible idea. So, I had heard about the Museum of Illusion in Philadelphia. And it's been up there for, I guess, several years now at this point. And then you found out that there was going to be one in DC, right?
Yeah.
Did you visit it at all before you started working with them, or was it just sort of, let me reach out and see how I can help out?
I didn't. I was I worked for this downtown holiday market in downtown DC. It's big, giant, like Christmas holiday market. There's a bunch of like stalls and vendors and stuff. And They partnered with us. I don't know, they must have paid us some amount of money to drop like this mobile installation there. It's like an upside down room. So it's a little box, they just dropped off with a van. And you stand in there, you take a picture, and then on your phone you can edit it over. You flip it over, and it looks like you're standing on like the ceiling of this little room.
Nice.
So you see that, and then you look them up, and they're like in New York. They're all over the world right now. It's kind of like a franchised cool museum.
Yeah.
And I think me and every other magician in the area probably emailed them like, hey, how would you like to have a magician come in?
Yeah.
And it will be a good fit, once we get to that. But after the holiday market gig, I was looking for another part-time gig. Mm-hmm. And I hit them up to see if they just needed like a supervisor, some sort of manager, and they were hiring at the time. So
awesome.
I was like, cool. I'm a good fit, like I have all this experience with running other markets and managing people. And then I just naturally not naturally, I've taught myself a lot about optical illusions and museum and visual stuff like that. So I was a really good fit, and they hired me pretty quickly.
That's cool.
So you start out as like a guide there, and I hadn't visited before that. So literally just like as I'm learning about, like as I'm going through, I'm like experiencing it for the first time.
That's cool.
Yeah. You kind of just like, it's really good for like families, and like it's good for like date nights because it's very heavy. There's a lot of photo opportunities. There's a lot of stuff. It looks really good through your cell phone camera. Yep. So it's a lot of like, all right, you're going to stand here. Your friend's going to stand over there. You're going to lean over like this, and it's going to look like her head is on a plate or something. So,
Sure.
So it's a lot of like cool interactive stuff. Kids really dig it. It's a lot of things that you can touch, you can handle, There's like a cloning table where you throw cards in the air, and it looks really cool when they're like in slow-mo or like the boomerang effects. So it's really cool. It's a fun place to work, people have a good time. I like it a lot.
Is there one thing that like you either hadn't seen before and or is just sort of your favorite spot, or your favorite, like the effect that you think looks the best or whatever?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty fascinated with like the human aspect of like how physiology affects us.
Okay.
So there's big parts of our like brain that center on like recognizing faces.
Okay.
And understanding facial features and reading emotions and stuff.
Sure.
So I was kind of surprised by this one exhibit. It's really, really simple. It's this series of mirrors that are just like in lines. So there's like a mirror, blank space, mirror, it's like 2 inches tall.
Okay.
There's a mirror going up. So you look at yourself through that and you just see these blank spaces. But if someone goes on the other side and two people are looking at each other and you're at the exact same eye level, it'll look like you're like swapping facial features.
Right.
Someone else's mouth over there. Or if you go up one, it's like looks like you're switching eyes all of a sudden,
Cool.
So you see, and when couples go in there or when people see it, it's just like they just light up when they get it right. You know?
Right.
And it makes them laugh so hard. And it's this thing that, like, I wouldn't think is like the most impressive part of the museum, but
Right.
just something about faces and mixing faces and like just seeing your face, but it's slightly different. It's like people freak out there. So it's
Right.
kind of fun to try and it's kind of people, they can't really get it without having a guide help them of like, all right, you got to line it up just right. You like take one step back, you know, and like you got to be looking at each other just the right spot. But it's fun to help them line it up because they really, really like it.
And yeah, and in that case, like it is sort of a it's of course only happening in your head, right? It's not like a visual, something's not appearing or disappearing out of your hands, but it's all a mind trick. But then also, I'm sure they feel it is rewarding when they do get that alignment just right, like if they're able to get and also something that I'm sure that they've probably seen some other of the optical illusions that are there. They might have seen at a science center or a children's museum.
Yeah.
But something a little more obscure like that is probably new to most of the people who are visiting.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff with like tricks with cell phone stuff. There's another larger like room where you just flip the image over. I've never seen anything like that before. And it's designed very well where like it looks kind of silly when you're just looking at it straight on, but when it comes out in the camera, it's like, it looks phenomenal. It really looks like you're on top of like a metro car, you know?
Sure.
And I'm really impressed by the amount of people that come in there with like closed minds.
Oh, okay.
Some people show up and they like, we've seen these people before where they're kind of like threatened by the idea of a magic trick.
Okay, sure.
Like their intelligence is like already they're on this defensive of like, so it's one thing with like, I can kind of understand like people don't want to be made to look dumb in front of their friends, you know?
Sure.
Magicians, like they have a bad reputation for making people look stupid.
Yeah.
But people buy like tickets to a museum.
Right.
And they come in there and they literally say to me like, I probably won't be fooled by a lot of this stuff. And it's like, are you dead inside?
Right,
like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you trying to not make this work? You know, like, why do you have this closed mind? Like, you spent money to be here. You know?
Yeah. You go to see a production of Peter Pan. I'm just here to look at the wires. That's all. That's all. I don't really want to. I don't want to feel like
this is all choreographed dancing. This is spontaneous. It's like shut up.
And that is something, that I'm with my Museum of the Impossible project. Like that is an important distinction of a different I word. I'm trying, obviously I'm going to be creating some illusion type stuff as well. And one of my ideas is the, the growing and shrinking head illusion. Yeah. The optical illusion with the spinning disc. That's just, it's such a compelling, weird visual trick that only happens in your brain, getting to see something else grow or shrink because of that sort of tunnel vision. But I am also trying to I want something that doesn't just look, weird, but I don't have a great definition of impossible, but I'm trying to push it closer to, magic and P.T. Barnum as opposed to optical illusion and isn't that interesting that our minds do this? I would rather have it be a puzzle that is harder to figure out.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm still going to get those guys though, who come and be like, yeah, but I know how all this stuff works. Like, okay, good for you. I have to just like a magic show. Some people come to a magic show to try and figure out how the professional trickster is doing their things. You know?
It's so funny that they really expose themselves. The insecurity just comes out of them.
Yeah.
And I want to hold them. I want to give them a hug, because it's okay. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be ignorant about the world and your senses. But people, we get really freaked out by it because then it leads to these implications of all right, well, if I don't understand this card trick, then what else am I not understanding about, politics or, the surrounding area or what people think of me or things like that. And it's man, I don't know how people get this inside of them, but it's I feel like it's our duty to try and just squeeze it out of them somehow. Right. Spook them or something.
Well, and I presume that doesn't happen to them when they're going to a gallery of paintings, right? They're not going to be I know how it's, so he's just doing some shading here with the brush. That's how it looks so real, you know? I would hope that, but I know also, I mean, even though I use that as sort of a tongue-in-cheek example, the point of that painting is not to try and fool you.
Yeah.
And the point of what you and I are doing with magic is not to try and fool you ultimately. Yeah. But unfortunately, that is a sort of in its lowest form, the very first base goal, did I did I surprise you or fool you? You know, but then hopefully on top of that, it was entertaining and thought provoking and all these other, you know, the things that make it more of an art than a craft, you know. But yeah, so I'm sort of curious as I'm sort of cooking up all these museum exhibit ideas, like what can I do to make it different from what I've seen at children's museums and science centers. And I definitely want to get over to the museum at some point here to as a research field trip. You know, at this point, it could be a write-off for research and development.
Yeah, I
but
hope you have like a hidden camera on you, like a little spy button. You know.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
Yes. Tell me more about
glasses with very thick temples on them with little red LEDs on the side. Yeah.
You have an exploding pen when you leave.
Right. Yeah. No, I think well, and certainly also, I mean, the plan for the museum that I'm cooking up is certainly not going to be in the DC area. So definitely could coexist and even be complementary with the Museum of Illusion. That hopefully the sort of folks that enjoy one will enjoy the other and come to all of it. You know.
Yeah. Definitely.
But no, I'm excited to get a chance to see it at some point. So what other, when you're sort of like around in the DC area, have you done any sorts of gigs that were in, like a venue that was sort of a surprising, on a boat or in a super small space, or like any sort of, I feel like a lot of times we're in an ideal situation, but then there are other times where a client will book us and we're like, why did you think this was going to work? Like, what was the plan here? You know?
Yeah. I did. There was this pop-up show, not mine. It was this other pop-up thing. It was called like Don't Tell Comedy.
Okay.
That was like in a church, and it wasn't in like the main sanctuary.
Okay.
It was like some side room, and it was okay because it wasn't like churchy people there.
Okay.
But I think everyone felt uncomfortable with every single curse word or sexual thing that came up, or like any blasphemous thing you were trying to say. It's like, it just had this vibe of like, this probably shouldn't be in a church, you know?
Right.
I don't know why there was space, you know? That's why they picked it, you know? So
okay. Yeah.
That was a pretty bad one.
That's funny.
And then just outdoor shows in general.
Yeah.
I know this guy that I love him to death. He's great. He books, his kind of thing is like apartment shows.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
these
Cool.
big high-rise apartments in DC, and they're all over the place, you know? It's a huge residential area.
Uh-huh.
And they're always looking to impress their, people that are paying too high a rent there, you know?
Yep. Sure.
They have these courtyards areas, and ideally they're like in the game rooms, you know?
Yeah.
There's a pool table, there's a screen over there. We do movie nights, we do comedy shows there. So, and
Cool.
50-50. It's like sometimes nobody shows up and the shows suck.
Yeah.
Sometimes people show up and they talk the whole time, because they're in their pajamas, they didn't have to do anything to get there. It's a free show.
Sure. Yeah.
So sometimes they really appreciate you coming out there, Sometimes they're the coolest audience you can get.
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes they're like outside in the summertime, and they like the laughs just like disappear. Big
It's
thing
rough.
with like comedy shows, or if you're a comedy magician, you want the laughs to like stay in the room. They want them to bounce everywhere and keep them rolling. And when it's outside, it's just like, it just goes away, and you're just like, it feels like the show, everything's going way faster because you're not pausing as long, you're not waiting for stuff. So outdoor shows too are, man, like everyone's having a good time, but they just don't feel as good as like a tight, dark, smelly comedy club.
Yep. Well, and especially during COVID, I'm sure you did some shows like this too, where while everyone was keeping their 6-foot separation, it is amazing how you'll get like little pockets of chuckles, and I know that if I was able to get you all together in a row of 12 people in a theater, that would be like proper laughter, because you would all be sort of, it's the exact same thing of like, how often are you laughing out loud on your couch at home by yourself versus even with one other friend, watching a TV show or movie, but then definitely if you're in a room full of people all having a great time and laughing. It could be the exact same jokes and the exact same comedian, but just the sort of permission that you're giving yourself to express that in a group setting is totally a different dynamic.
Yeah, I did a couple of Zoom shows because I was comfortable with like doing magic over Zoom, something visual I can do. I tried to do one comedy Zoom show, and it was like, it was impossible. It was like, it physically couldn't work, like I didn't understand. You feel like such an idiot. You're just talking in your laptop, and like you can barely hear someone has their mic on to show that they're laughing. It's like, what are we doing? This is silence. This isn't anything, But at least with like when I was doing magic, it was like, you couldn't interact with people, which kind of stinks. You can't get a lot of stuff is dependent on audience interaction stuff.
Yeah.
But it was nice to be able to like stand up and do like a larger, kind of like stage thing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden just take your camera and just like point it down to a close-up pad.
Yep.
That was a cool transition. And that got me thinking for like, I have a show coming up with the Capitol Fringe Festival.
Okay.
Of like, I would like there to be this parlor show act, but I really want to do like some close-up stuff that is meaningful to me. And I want to be able to project that, and like have a camera like on the table like that. Like I would really like that show to be able to go from like, stage to close-up,
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure, you would not have necessarily, cameras and screens existed before COVID, of course, but now that we've all become more familiar with that tech and how to sort of frame some pieces for that, I bet you will see a lot more of that sort of hybrid stuff staying in shows inevitably.
Yeah. Yeah. The Derek DelGaudio show in and of itself.
Right.
I mean, it was years ago now, but sure. I remember seeing that in New York of just like, it was like a beautiful like theater one-man show, and then just the most impressive part that I think me and everyone else loved the most was the card handling stuff.
Yeah,
and it was just the camera like on a close-up table, and it was like, man, it's flawless.
Well, and you're watching. I mean, it's still close enough. Like I haven't seen Shin Lim's Vegas show, but I'm a little bit incredulous because it sounds like he's in a theater of about 1,000 people, and a lot of it is close-up magic on a table. And I feel like when you're in that big of a space, it's the whole joke about it's just you're in a room with 1,000 strangers watching TV together. Where I believe he's down there actually doing it, but I remember at Derek's show, like you could still watch Derek's hands. Like it was a 100-seat theater, so it was intimate enough that that you were still able to see that he's doing the stuff. You just got that much better of an angle if you watched the projection and the camera there. No, I think. I watched plenty of Zoom shows. I think the person who handled it, the audience reaction problem the best was Carissa Hendricks, aka Lucy Darling. Did a smart thing where she does a lot of crowd work where she's bantering with people, and she sort of had a virtual front row where she would like look on the screen and find someone who seemed to be having a good time and ask them to unmute or unmute them herself, and then basically like leave them unmuted. And so she had probably 6 or 7 people who were unmuted the entire time. And that way, when there was a joke or when there was a magic moment, there was at least something that was happening from the audience. But even then, it sounded like 6 people laughing in their own separate homes, it didn't sound like 100 people all laughing at the same time.
Yeah. I still just always think of like see so many performers or whoever is like hosting the Zoom shows, just like trying to stare at the audience, and then I'm like,
yep.
All right, who's here? And just like
many
images of just like a person this way away from their camera, just like trying to see who's in here right now,
Right. No,
Anthony, where are you from, Anthony? Like, oh, you don't want to talk? All right, don't worry about it, Anthony.
Yeah. No, and it was all the anonymity of like if someone doesn't want to unmute, they're not going to unmute. It's not like sometimes somebody in a live show might be on the fence, and you can there can be polite cajoling or there can be encouragement or whatever to get them to be a part of the show. But yeah, like if someone's laying on the couch at home and doesn't feel like turning on their camera or turning off their mute, then it's not happening. You can't you can't reach through there and do it. But definitely a strange time, and I'm glad we were able to do something with it and to sort of keep some level of our craft going. But definitely a weird sort of format to be working in.
Yeah.
And I am curious like I said, what's sort of the lasting, if we'll see more hybrid stuff in shows, or certainly, I mean, I sort of expected this, and it was very true, where the rebound after, like when things did start to finally open back up again, all sorts of live in-person events just really came back in force, which was awesome for those of us who are in that industry that was so dark for so long, So it's nice to be on the other side of that for sure.
Yeah. You can't. Live shows are like one of a kind, man. You can't replace them.
Yeah. No, it's and so do you think that you have a tricky time marrying magic and comedy? Like, because we've talked before about how I've never heard anyone else. I've always heard magic and comedy talked about with tension. Horror is what you brought up in another episode, and that's completely true. And I love thinking about it in those terms. Do you think about all of that working together, like where you want to make sure that the laugh doesn't kill the magic tension, or vice versa, right?
Yeah. I think I was always scared of like scary movies as a kid.
Okay.
And I didn't really start getting into like horror movies until I started doing more comedy. Kind of just understanding it from this perspective of like the build up and the tension is like, that's what people hate almost more than the monster itself, you know?
Yep.
It's like just this building it up, and then the release of it is like it's a scream, it's a laughter, it's all the same. Yeah, sure. It's all the same stuff. So I think the biggest problem I have with marrying like comedy and magic is that like magic routines, the build up is kind of it's really important to set things up in a certain way, and it has to be the same way for the effect to work, right? Same way a joke has to be kind of set up the same way for the punchline to work, for it to make sense at all.
Yeah. And
trying to add new material or different material, or I think comedy magicians always run into this problem where the magic can seem fresh and impressive or whatever, and then you hear the jokes that the funny part that's going along with it, and it's just the hackiest, dumbest thing you've ever heard.
Yeah.
But because they've married it to this trick, it's done in this repetitive way that maybe they wrote it 10 years ago, and it doesn't work anymore,
Yeah.
And so it's trying to find like new funny things that are happening in the magic that you're doing, that the magic is, you've been doing for years or whatever, but trying to find new interesting stuff like that.
That's cool.
But yeah, I kind of just appreciate stand up by itself so much that like I'll just separate the two. When I'm doing like a longer set for like my stage routine, I hope people book me in the hope of like, all right, you like magic and you like traditional stand up.
Okay.
Because I'm just going to take a moment where I'm going to walk away from magic tricks, and I'm going to stand there and deliver 5 minutes of material.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about growing up being a chubby little fat kid,
Okay.
Or like I want to do a bit on this.
Yeah.
And there's nothing magical that's going to happening for that time.
Right.
And I'm curious, like I just do it because like I do enough comedy shows where it's like I'm doing no magic, and it doesn't, I don't find the marrying them, I find it too awkward to try and put them like right next to each other.
Okay.
So it's kind of an experiment of my own. Like, let's see what happens if I just have the two separate things that are happening, and see if people enjoy it,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it is fun. Like most of the comedy in my magic show is very situation based. It's less like setup and punchline, right? And more about getting ourselves into this funny, weird, random situation and then sort of laughing about it together. But like that's equally hard to engineer, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, and the nuances of what go into a good setup for a joke are often. I mean, a great example I love about this in terms of comedy and magic is, Matt King one time had a person sign their name on the back of a playing card when they were supposed to sign it on the front. And then he got this huge laugh because like, okay, well, it's going to be really easy to find your card now because you've written your name on the back of it. And because it got such a good laugh, he then worked that into the routine. And so now he engineers the situation where more often than not, somebody will write their name on the back of the card because of how he's made the routine flow in his wording and his choreography.
Yeah.
And that is just as nuanced as, Jerry Seinfeld obsessing over every word that goes into the setup of a joke.
Yeah.
But it's like manipulating another human being on stage to end up in this funny situation with you.
Yeah. I like that trick a lot. I found I like natural ways to do it when I was like getting into stand up, of trying to set up, crowd work is supposed to be a spontaneous kind of improvisational thing.
Sure.
But every comic who knows what they're doing knows that they can ask questions that elicit a small list of responses, you know?
Sure,
And you
yeah.
just have your thing ready to go for every single response. So
Yep.
it's kind of this fun, like I can appreciate these little tricks that you can learn
Right.
of like what to do and stuff of like, I'm going to, like you just have this stuff ready to go. So it always seems like it's natural or like it's off the cuff, but it's like, no, there's only a couple of things people can say to this stuff. So it's cool to have these like ready to go and have these like fake spontaneous moments happen.
I remember, Brian Curry and I chatting a lot about, his show is the illusion of him being witty. And I contend, I mean, he's selling himself short. He's still funny and witty off stage, but he definitely will admit that anything that feels like wit in his show is usually from repetition and having a good memory of like, what did I say the last time this thing came up? You know? And so, I'm sure crowd work and asking, what do you do? Where are you from? That there's not going to be even if it's a crazy variety of answers, you could probably pigeonhole it into what kind of category that answer is, and then go to your stock information or your bit that you use when they say that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm an incredibly lazy writer as well. Not saying that
Okay.
Brian is, but
Sure. Yeah.
I think it's easier for me to like a funny moment happens on stage, I respond in a quick like funny way, and then from now on I'm like, the second the show ends, I'm like, I gotta write that down. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do it that way from now on.
Sure.
Like that's the new ending of this. Even whether it's a trick or a punchline or something, it's like, that was a funnier way to do it.
Right.
And
Yep.
I can't manufacture those things. So
No.
yeah.
I love it. That's great. Well, so if whenever you start up Classified Comedy again, or when you're doing other public shows, magic or otherwise, the website that folks can check out is charlierossmagic.com. And then you're a great follow over on Instagram. That's also Charlie Ross Magic. So be sure to check those out because you're all over the place, especially in the DMV, but certainly other points around, Thank you for hanging out with me.
Thanks,
here.
Peter. Yeah, appreciate it,
This
man.
is a lot of fun. And to our friend listening, thank you for tuning in. That is going to do it for this episode of the Podcast of the Impossible. For behind the scenes access to the Museum of the Impossible project that we talked about, as well as info on my public shows and private events and social media and more, you can head on over to peterwood.com. I'm Peter Wood. Thanks.